It's time for the 420 Radio News, covering the latest headlines in consumer cannabis, medical marijuana, and industrial hemp. Transcripts of 420 Radio News are available daily on our website at 420radio.org. Now, here's Priscilla Simon.
Hey folks, thanks for tuning in. It's your 420 Radio News for Wednesday, August 6, 2014. The Washington, D.C. Board of Elections has certified that the DC Cannabis Campaign has submitted enough valid signatures to place legalization on the ballot this November. When passed, district residents will legally be allowed to carry up to 2 ounces of marijuana for personal use. Residents may also cultivate 6 marijuana plants at home, with 3 of those being mature at any time. Residents may also give another adult up to 1 ounce of marijuana. However, there will neither be personal nor commercial sales of marijuana in the district. Sales and use of marijuana paraphernalia and growing equipment will also be made legal. Congress still has the final say over Washington, D.C.'s affairs, and politicians always seem ready to block any marijuana reforms there. Medical marijuana was held up in 1998 through congressional shenanigans, and recent DC decriminalization is being threatened by Representative Andy Harris of neighboring Maryland. Washington, D.C. joins Oregon and Alaska on voting for full legalization this election.
Yeah, we told you about that Representative Andy Harris. He's the one who's trying to hold up the D.C. decriminalization, where it's just going to be a $25 fine. And he had some pretty interesting things to say about it. He got in a Twitter battle with the mayor of D.C., actually, and pointed out that if a minor is caught smoking a marijuana joint in Washington, D.C., underage pot smoking, it'd be a $25 fine. But if he's caught smoking a cigarette, it's a $50 fine. So there's actually twice the amount of fine for tobacco as there is for marijuana, which there should be. Tobacco is dangerous and addictive. We should be having some sort of incentive to get people off of tobacco.
Agreed.
We'll tell you more about this Washington, D.C. initiative coming up in our Behind the Headlines segment.
Cool. The Oregon State Financial Estimate Committee has projected between $17 and $40 million in annual revenues from marijuana legalization proposed by Measure 91. The committee, which includes the Secretary of State, Treasurer, and Revenue Director, give a range whose lowest estimate is still $1 million more than the $16 million estimate the Legislative Revenue Office produced in late July. The high range is $1.5 million more than the $38.5 million estimate Econ Northwest produced for the New Approach Oregon. The committee estimates marijuana legalization will cost the state $3.9 million per year. The Oregon Liquor Control Commission estimated that creating a new regulatory system for recreational marijuana would cost the agency $3.8 million by 2017, plus increases in operating expenses by $3.2 million annually. Oregon's Department of Agriculture thinks it will need $100,000 annually for regulation of marijuana-infused foods. The Oregon Health Authority estimated it would spend $200,000 annually on 2 positions for marijuana licensing. And the Oregon State Police told the committee it would need to add 3 detectives and send certain deputies for additional training at a cost of $400,000 annually.
Well, it still seems like a win, right? If it's going to cost the state $3.9 million a year, but it's going to bring in at least $17 million a year, it's a win. Now, the prohibitionists are going to try to say, well, the remainder, that other $14 million or however much we would make, is going to be eaten up by lost productivity and absenteeism and illness and stoned mayhem on the freeway. And my God, what about the children? Things that folks here in Oregon know just not to be true. In the state of Oregon, 15.5% of adults aged 21 and older use cannabis on an annual basis. That's right, 15.5%. 11.1% of Oregon adults 21 and older use cannabis on a monthly basis. That's 314,000 of us. And among Oregonians 21 and older who use cannabis 20 or more times a month, there are 108,000 of us. That's 3.8% of Oregon's population. I have to think with hundreds of thousands of us using marijuana on a regular basis, if there were going to be any increased costs or danger to the public, we would have seen them already.
Last week, a Colorado task force unveiled proposed new rules to limit potency levels, and on Wednesday, the National Cannabis Industry Association launched its first Food Safety Basics course specifically for marijuana industry professionals. It is based on a curriculum originally developed by the National Restaurant Association, and participants in Denver will learn about subjects including foodborne illnesses, proper personal hygiene, how to prevent cross-contamination, sanitizing, and more. Pot edibles account for about 2/3 of Colorado's legal marijuana market, the NCIA estimates, and it says isolated cases of production issues and irresponsible use prove the potential benefit of expanding training programs. The first food safety course is taking place on Wednesday, and the responsible selling program will be held on August 19th, the NCIA said, adding that more training dates will be scheduled.
Well, this is great. And reading some background on this, there was one case where they talked about a company, they had to recall some of their bubble hash because they were making bubble hash in a regular old washing machine. They were using a regular washing machine to spin it and, use the water and all that kind of stuff. And, sure, maybe you can run some bleach through the washing machine and maybe it's clean and okay, but I think I'd like to have a little better regulation than that. I'd like to know that the people are using, food grade items, food grade machinery to make these infused items. And the other shocking thing in this to me, Priscilla, was 2/3 of what they sell in legal pot shops is edibles. Wow. Does that seem right to you?
Yeah, I pretty much go to the shops for edibles. They're delicious and they're effective.
I wonder how much of that is because there's no public smoking and no place for people to go smoke. And since it's mostly tourists coming in and they can't fly back with it or anything, or maybe they're buying the edibles because they can fly back with them. I have to think about that a little.
Maine Governor Paul LePage announced Wednesday that the state will soon begin drug testing convicted drug felons who apply for or receive federal welfare benefits. The drug testing was authorized by a law change that passed in 2011 as part of a compromise between Democrats and Republicans, but it was never implemented. Tests will be required of drug felons who receive temporary assistance for needy families, or TANF, a federal program administered as a block grant in each state. If a person tests positive, he or she will have the option to be tested a second time. At any time, an individual can avoid termination of benefits by enrolling in an approved and appropriate substance abuse program. LePage and his Republican allies in the legislature tried to push legislation that would institute random drug testing for all welfare recipients, but were not successful. Currently, 11 states have some sort of drug testing for TANF recipients, according to the National Conference of State Legislatures. The states that have laws either have language that allows testing for recipients if there is a reasonable suspicion that they might be drug users, or make applicants fill out a questionnaire designed to gauge whether they are a drug user. Random drug testing laws have faced constitutional challenges in some states, including Florida, where a law was struck down earlier this year.
Well, folks, how I feel about this drug testing in general, and I think it's even more reprehensible when we're talking about drug testing for TANF benefits. This temporary assistance for needy families, most of the beneficiaries of it are children. Most of the kids that are benefiting from this are kids. So you're talking about taking the food and the rent, the housing and the clothing away from kids to prove some sort of point about drug use. And they're going to limit it here to just the people that have had a drug felony. And they're doing that for constitutional reasons. They know that they can't just have random drug testing for everybody who applies for welfare. The courts are going to strike that down as a violation of the Fourth Amendment. But with this, with drug felons, you have this reasonable suspicion. You can articulate a reasonable suspicion. And it's like they do in some of these other states. They have this questionnaire that they have you fill out that's supposed to gauge whether or not you are a drug user. I think the questionnaire is probably, do you smoke? And if you ask cigarettes, they know you're a drug user. So, no, that's not the test, but just
that's a key indicator, though.
Cigarettes. So there's that, and this is just disgusting when you try to tie welfare benefits. And again, understand that the people that are receiving these TANF benefits, by and large, had been working folks in the past. and by and large had been paying taxes in the past. So you're taking from them a benefit that they've already paid into just because you want to discriminate against them because they're choosing to use marijuana instead of alcohol or tobacco. This is why legalization is so important, even in a state like Maine, where marijuana is decriminalized and medical marijuana is very successful. Legalize everywhere, and then we will equalize everywhere.
Exactly. According to the Seattle Police Department, burglars cut a hole in the side of a Georgetown marijuana dispensary Wednesday morning, stealing $50,000 worth of medical marijuana stored inside. Officers were called to reports of a burglary at 6:50 a.m. The pot dispensaries had a large hole cut into its side and marijuana strewn about inside. The business owner told police it appeared $50,000 worth of pot was gone, and that someone had climbed in from the hole to snatch it. Seattle police were able to recover fingerprints as well as video surveillance footage from the business. They are currently looking for the burglars.
Well, you know, there's nothing lower on this planet than a marijuana ripper, except maybe a bike thief. But they're right up there, number 1 and 2, as far as I'm concerned. And this, again, highlights the problem Washington's got in its legalization. By taxing it so high and by restricting the supply so much, you've still maintained the black market economics that make it profitable to cut a hole in a wall to try to get dried vegetable matter. Nobody's doing that at the cigar store.
An Arvada man was rushed by ambulance to the hospital on Sunday after he said he consumed a chocolate bar that contained THC at the Denver County Fair's Pot Pavilion. Quote, "They were giving out samples and they made sure to tell us that the samples are just a sample of their chocolate, doesn't have any THC in it, and the guy went so far as to let us know if we came into the store, the ones in the store would taste different," end quote, Richard Jones said. On-site EMTs first attended to the Arvada man before calling him an ambulance. Tests at the hospital revealed he had more than 100 nanograms of THC in his system, or about 20 times the legal driving limit.
Oh, man. Yeah. Now, this sounds to me like it was an accident, right? Sounds like this company wanted to distribute some chocolate bars, and maybe one of their medicated ones made it into the batch and accidentally got to this guy. But I have to question the wisdom of doing that in the first place. I mean, if you're giving out a chocolate bar to these people and then telling them, oh, by the way, this isn't going to taste anything like what you get at our store, what's the point in giving them the chocolate bar? Here's something that's nothing like what we sell. Enjoy it. I mean, you just set yourself up for that risk right there. I guess maybe to try to push the brand or something, or to push the location. But it seems to me that's a really risky move. And, you know, doing a lot of these events, anytime there's some sort of candy or cookies or cake that's laid out, one of the first questions we have is that medicated? Is that medicated? And the people out there, when they hear stories like this about somebody getting accidentally dosed at the fair, they're naturally going to think, oh my God, what if that had been my kid? Oh my God, what if that had been me? We don't need stories like this giving us a black eye, so make better, wiser decisions, Colorado.
Yeah, scary.
All right. Hey, it's 4:20 in Colorado and the rest of the Mountain Time Zone, so that means Priscilla has to make her way to a very important Union Local 420 safety meeting. Priscilla, thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Thanks. Bye, Mom.
When we come back, we're going to go behind the headlines and take a look at the details of Washington, D.C.'s legalization initiative. You're listening to The Russ Belville Show on